The webinar is now live. All right. Welcome to Upstage Lung Cancer's second Fireside Chat. Tonight's event will follow a very simple format. We'll have a lively discussion with each of our panelists, audience members. You can type your questions into the Q&A box. Then we'll bring your questions to the panel. Remember, audience members, you won't be seen on camera, so relax, settle back, and enjoy the conversation. And just a side note, the Q&A box is only for questions directed to the panel. You can use the chat box for side conversations, comments, or technical questions. And now, without any further ado, here's the queen of the ball, the one and only Hildy Grossman. Yay!
Oh, shucks. Oh, thank you so much. Hi, I am Hildy Grossman, and I'm president and founder of Upstage Lung Cancer, and I'm also a singer. And I hope all of you were able to listen to our concert. It's a small world, right? Just before this conversation tonight. The idea for that concert about what a small world we have came from the experience that we've all had with the current pandemic, and realizing that, you know, we're all in this together. We all experience the same kinds of threats and concerns, and we all have to find a way to make the best of life. So bringing singers and dancers from all over the world was, to me, a great joy. So these virtual tools we have now, which is wonderful, allows us to connect the world, the world's performers, as well as those in our own backyard. So tonight, I am so honored to have 5 other panelists with us tonight. We have Bonnie Adario. She's a lung cancer survivor and also founder of the Go-To Foundation for Lung Cancer. Jacob Sands, a thoracic oncologist and researcher at Dana-Farber Institute. And Jordan Rich, celebrated WBZ radio broadcaster and co-host of Upstage Lung Cancer's podcast, Backstage at Upstage. So hopefully you'll tune into that as well. And then we also have John Berman, a magnificent musician who comes to us right now from Sao Paulo, Brazil. And then finally, we have the wonderful Nian Sun, professor and researcher at Northeastern University. I'm a Northwestern grad, so I often want to say Northwestern, but it's really Northeastern. So welcome everyone tonight. I'd like to start with Bonnie and just ask you to say a few words about your own journey with lung cancer and how you went about founding the organization that you have, which is extraordinary.
Sure, I'm happy to do that. I was diagnosed 17 years ago. Shocked like most people are when they're first diagnosed with lung cancer. I had stage 3B. My tumor was on my heart and my aorta. So it was a tough job for quite a few people, but they pulled me through it. But while I was going through all of the chemotherapy and surgery and all the treatments, I had a lot of time to think and a lot of time to look on the internet. And I was shocked at the lack of empathy for lung cancer patients and lung cancer itself. And then I was even more shocked when I learned that there was a stigma that everybody thought you had to smoke to get lung cancer and you brought it on yourself and that you really weren't worth saving. And I made a promise to myself right there in the chemo chair that if I got out of the knothole and could stand on my own 2 feet again, I would do something to change that. And we still have a ways to go. We still have a ways to go and a lot of work to do, but it's starting to happen. Doors are opening. And this is one door, things like this are really helpful, really helpful. So thank you, Hildy.
Well, thank you, Bonnie. And also, I am a lung cancer survivor. I think it's 13 years, but I'd have to sit and count on my fingers, something like that. And it was a very similar experience. Mine was found by complete accident, which is a long circuitous story that started with slipping on a pair of shoes and winding up with an MRI of my back for no good reason that found my lung cancer. So it's one of those diseases that if you have lungs, you can get lung cancer. And so one of the sayings that we have at Upstage Lung Cancer is that survival should not be by accident. And so we're very much in pursuit of early detection of lung cancer, where we can find it early and treat it, and then consider this to be like a chronic disease. And so Jacob Sands, oncologist, is also very interested in early detection. Can you say a little more? How did you get interested in treating lung cancer, and how did that then have you gravitate to the whole position of let's find it early?
Well, I did my my training out in California, actually, not too far from Bonnie, up the mountain a bit in Sacramento. And there, I honestly, I just wanted to see, I felt like I hadn't seen enough people with lung cancer. And so I started just showing up to the clinic of one of my attendings who was really exceptional, Dr. David Gandera, who of course Bonnie knows very well. And I went into his clinic and said, hey, can I just see your new patients? And on top of everything else, that was kind of an unusual thing. And so so he really became quite a mentor to me. And I started doing more within lung cancer. And the more people I came to know, the more I really felt kind of protective of all the people with lung cancer and wanting to treat them, and this stigma that is really unfair and unjust. And so it's the research going on was very exciting to me. I mean, there are a lot of aspects to this, but I really felt drawn to the individuals and protective of the individuals, and also very excited about a lot of the research going on. And there's just so much that was going on at the time, and it's still going on within lung cancer as far as research. And so it's from a research and academic standpoint, it's been exciting. And it is very exciting to see the advances happen in real life as well. So the more I was involved in treating people with lung cancer, the more and more drawn I became. And then my career after fellowship started at Lahey Hospital Medical Center that had recently started a lung screening program. It was a free program at the time. This was before any approvals for lung screening, but recently, this was very soon after the initial NLST publication. They'd put together a program. And so when I started there, I was recruited to the steering committee to help run that program. It was when they were still in the pilot stage, and really got quite an education around lung screening as I helped to build out that program as well. And, you know, as a medical oncologist, I meet a lot of people with stage 4 lung cancer. And so I spend a lot of my time treating people to really improve and prolong their quality of life, which is, of course, very meaningful. But to be able to catch it when it is curable there's obviously a big difference between treating somebody with a goal of cure and treating somebody to control the disease. And so this has really made me very passionate about advancing that and making sure that if people are going to get lung cancer, let's catch it when it can be cured. And so I've really put a lot of time and effort into advancing lung screening and making sure that we're catching as many of these as early as possible.
Well, it's just extraordinarily important. And I think I know over the time that I was diagnosed, at that point, there was hardly anything going on. There weren't really any patient advocate organizations to get involved with that I was able to, contact. And over these years, there are many organizations now. And as you said, the research has just mushroomed, and the number of drugs I wish I could be accurate. I could make up some number, but probably wouldn't help. But many drugs over the last 10 years for treating lung cancer. So that's so hopeful. And that, and the early screening for people who are more at high risk. Now Medicare will cover that, which there was a big fight, and all of us who were and patient advocate organizations signed on a letter, and there was a lot of push, but now they will cover it, and we're hoping that they will cover that kind of screening at an earlier time. So it's just super important to find this early. One of the projects that we have funded was the research of Nian's son. And will you say a little bit about your project, which Jacob put us in touch with each other, and I continue to be dazzled and excited by it.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you, Hildy. Indeed, we started the investigation on gas sensors like 5 or 6 years ago, started with the program from the CBD chemical biological defense program from the DoD. So we're detecting weapons of mass destruction, like anthrax, for example, from the air. So this is how we get started. Then we started looking into designing gas sensors for detecting different biomarkers for different diseases. So we started with diseases for like Alzheimer's disease, then lung cancer. And then we also looked into diabetes, drug abuse, etc. So in 2019, I got in touch with Jacob, and we started to work together, and we are really grateful that Upstage Lung Cancer Foundation funded our efforts bringing those sensors for lung cancer screening into. We are hopeful that we'll bring that into clinical trial very soon. So eventually we hope that we can realize the dream, like Hildy mentioned. We want to bring the sensors to a wearable device like a watch, so that it can breathe into the device.
This is my idea.
And we can use that device as an early screening tool for lung cancer. So we are working toward that direction.
So what I understand and understood when we talked about this was someone could breathe on something that had sensors to different chemicals, and those chemicals would be reflected. So if you had lung cancer, those would be a particular pattern of chemicals that would show up on that sensor. So you breathe on it and it tells you do or don't have lung cancer, which I thought brilliant. And so when you get in touch with, if anybody's listening from Fitbit or from Apple Watch, get in touch with this man, because I thought how genius it would be to just breathe on your watch, periodically, and you could just keep the tabs on what was going on in terms of lung cancer or not. If you were either a survivor and you just wanted to regularly check, or if you were somehow likely to develop lung cancer for some reason. So brilliant, and we love supporting that research, and I'm cheering you on for those possibilities. And so I'd like to turn to Jordan Rich, who is just an amazing broadcaster. He's been heard throughout. He's the New England broadcaster, but your broadcasts have gone national, right? They've gone pretty far.
Yeah, they do actually, because of the station I work at and have been for 25 years. It's a clear channel, 50,000 watt station, WBZ. So in a sense, you're right. This is, for those of you who are familiar with the pre-digital age, this was a signal, an actual radio signal that traveled, not quite to Bonnie's neck of the woods, but close. So, but anyway, go ahead.
But one of the wonderful, there's so many wonderful things about you. I just could spend the whole rest of the time saying, but one of the great things, Jordan has been so supportive of Upstage Lung Cancer, and he's He's the MC for all of our spring events, and anything I've ever asked of him, he always says, sure, sure. There's no hesitancy or like, oh my God, why is she calling me again? But the thing that's been also wonderful is that you've used the airways to talk about lung cancer and in some cases relate some personal experiences. I don't know if you'd be willing to share some of.
Sure. I mean, who isn't touched by cancer among us in the panel and everyone listening and watching? I mean, that's an understatement. But in my particular case, my mother, who's now 91, had lung cancer 20 years ago and was cured at the time, never smoked a day in her life. And my late wife, passed away from what ultimately was mesothelioma caused by previous treatment for a cancer 20 years earlier. And it sounds awful to think that your treatment would ultimately take you, but philosophically, she always said, I had 20 years, they saved me for 20 more years. So I have, like anybody else, I have a stake in it. But here's the thing. First of all, you can't say no to Hildy. That's the first thing. You don't turn Hildy down. Everyone's nodding, right? John, in Brazil, you can be in another country. Hildy says, do something for me. You do it. I mean, because
can't say no.
Can't say no. But really, we're living in a crazy time when media is ugly and all that. And I'm a tiny little blip in the media scale. But if we can do something to, in case of tonight, entertain, but at the same time inform, educate, and maybe help people with a little good, positive information. That's my joy in life. I've done everything you can possibly do in my business. I want to see if we can affect change with education. And Hildy's podcast, which I'm so thrilled for her and all of us, is another step in that direction. And, the idea of working with you on this podcast, and Bonnie's husband's already been on, and I'm sure we're going to get the docs on soon. And maybe we'll even let John in for just for to have a musical guest. But the point is, we've got a mission to not just talk about lung cancer, but to talk about so many things that need to get airtime. So I am a messenger from the other side of the media that's not concerned with tweets that attack and all that. That's not my game. My game is to basically help spread the good word. And again, Hildy's a very difficult person to say, no, I can't do that. I've never said no to you. Have I, Hildy?
Never. Never.
I don't say no to my wife either. So that's,
There we go.
I'm basically subservient to all women. Bonnie, what do you want? Anything you want, Bonnie?
I want to ask you a question. I want to make a comment about what you do, Jordan. Recently, because of the book, I've been doing a lot of radio shows. And I am so impressed with what it takes to ask the right questions and, to really be a good radio show broadcaster. It's the questions that are the key. I was on one this morning that was only 5 minutes long. It was Marcus in the Morning in San Francisco. And he got out of me in 5 minutes, like the entire story. So bravo to, radio and, what it can do to reach people with important messages.
I'll thank you for all of my colleagues. And I'll say this, without our lungs, we don't have any ability to do what we do. I mean, I have a sign-off line and a lot of old radio shows, good night and good luck, Edward R. Murrow. Everyone, I'm an old traditional guy. So my sign-off for the last 25 years has always been, and it's the same on my podcast, be well so you can do good. Very simple, be well. And it's the old put your mask on and then you can save people. So I treasure my health, my very vibrant health, and I take good care of myself. But I realize, and I'm going to assume John's going to say the same thing, without that ability, that beautiful system inside John and inside me to either speak or play an instrument, we're done, we're toast. So I don't take anything for granted. And I do think you're right, Bonnie. Radio and podcasting is the future. And people would say, future? What are you talking about? It's never gone away. And it's, Hildy, I'm going to scold you because Hildy said she said to us, she's not a good storyteller. She's a wonderful storyteller, as evidenced by the first 6 or 8 podcasts. And you're only going to get better. So people want to share stories and learn from these stories. So I am thrilled to play a teeny part, which is really all it is, but to be the spokes voice to try to push this idea out. Very happy.
I also like what you were saying, Jordan, is so much of our time, if you look at the media, if you listen to television or whatever, the news is always bad news. It's never good news. We don't hear good stories about good deeds. I mean, Bonnie's organization is gigantic. She has started something that's worldwide. It's extraordinary. And part of my whole essence of self is around making music, and part of what gives me great pleasure is providing music and getting the feedback from the audience that they're experiencing joy. That's what I love. And John Berman and I have performed together many times. I've known him for a long time. He's an extraordinary musician, and he's a joyful person. So can you say something about your own feelings about music and making music, and now that you're living in Brazil, you know, what difference you experience in Brazil versus the US?
Well, you know, I came down to Brazil because I love Brazilian music, and people who are musicians who know about music know that Brazil has a very vibrant, rich musical culture. So much so that jazz musicians such as myself grew up playing a lot of, in the bossa nova times, as you know, all those jazz musicians, Cannonball Adderley, almost all of them would at one point or another record Brazilian music. So Brazilian music is very in the minds, I think, of a lot of jazz musicians. So I first came down to Brazil interested in Brazilian music. And then, you know, I met my wife, so I got interested in something else too. Sorry. Anyway, so that combination is, you know, that will do any musician in. So, but musically speaking, Brazil is, I mean, people love music, and there's a lot of live music. Unfortunately, at this time, we've really been, you know what, screwed, I guess we can say. That's okay to use the word, because, you know, I used to play, we all are musicians, we used to be playing in bars and clubs, and you know, it's there all the time. And right now, we're all like, you know, we're at home teaching online and stuff like that. But Brazil is, I mean, Brazil is just it's a fantastic musical culture, and people really, you know, one thing, and this is probably true about other cultures, in Brazil, if you say, like, if you get in a taxi or something, you say you're a musician, people will say, wow, that's so cool. You know, like the reaction, you know, is a little bit different, to be honest with you. Obviously, they're Americans who love music, but it's kind of interesting when you go to these countries, all of a sudden being a musician, they don't kind of look at you like what, you know, what's that, you know? I mean, they really appreciate, my experience at least has been, when you say that you're a musician, their eyes kind of light up. That's a kind of a cool thing. So it's nice, because when you're going through customs, for example, in Brazil, and you say a musician, they don't look at you like the customs people do in New York.
That's true. No more details needed, right? And one of the dear friends that John and I have had the pleasure to know was Seth Rubin, who was an amazing sax player, gentle soul, sweet human being. And unfortunately, he lost his life to lung cancer, but he and I and my writing partner, John Lamb, were working together on a new, maybe a Broadway show one day, but it's a musical theater piece called Ziegfeld. Some people who are young in this audience won't know who Ziegfeld was. You should look him up, because he was an extraordinary person. So we wrote the play. John Lamb and I wrote the play, and then Seth joined us to write the music. He and I worked on the music, and John and I wrote the lyrics. And Seth did the very last song. He finished the last piece. He put the dot at the end of the sentence when he lost his life. And his great wish was that we would be able to do Ziegfeld. So that's one of the things I look forward to when this pandemic allows and things get better, that we'll do Ziegfeld, at least initially we'll do it for upstage lung cancer, because I'd like so much to share this. I think, in all humility, it's a great show, and the music is wonderful. Thanks to Seth.
You know, Hildy, I was going to say something which is actually kind of, it's blowing my mind, which, because, you know, to be honest with you, I didn't even know what this thing was all about. I didn't even know it was about lung cancer or anything. So this is like all kind of new to me. But this is amazing, because Seth Rubin, who is a very close friend of mine, who died, what was it, 2 years ago, he never, this is like strange, he never talked about the fact that he was sick with lung cancer. I didn't even know until right now that I knew he died of some cancer, but I didn't even know it was lung cancer. And this is like kind of blowing my mind, because he never spoke about it, never. Now, it could be a little bit, you know, Seth, his personality, but I'm thinking you guys who understand this, maybe because of what it was just hitting me, that maybe the fact that he had this lung cancer, he didn't want to share that with people, because when Bonnie was talking about that thing, of that kind of hit me, that, well, maybe this thing about cancer, it's not something that he would, because I was thinking, I mean, Seth, he's my buddy. I stayed with him for a week last time I was in Boston, but he would never share anything about his condition. Do you think that has to do with the fact that it was lung cancer as opposed to something else? I don't know.
Absolutely. Can I tell a little story, Hildy?
Please.
A second. I met this beautiful woman years ago. You know, we were really early on when we first started the foundation, and she was just lovely. And she had lung cancer. And she told me one day, she said, you know, Bonnie, I don't tell people that I have lung cancer. I tell them I have breast cancer. And I was just really taken aback. And I said, oh my God, why? I mean, that's so sad that you feel like you have to do that. And she said, well, you know, I don't want people to ask me if I smoked. I don't want people to, you know, ask me a lot of questions. Her final words were, I'm angry. I'm really, really angry, because I'm a never smoker. I've never smoked in my life. My parents didn't smoke. I wasn't around secondhand smoke. And she said, and I'm angry. So I tell people that I have breast cancer, so I don't have to answer all those questions, John, to your point. But then she said, but the world needs to know that smoking is killing us for a much different reason. Smoking is killing lung cancer patients because they don't feel free to talk about their disease. And that's when I really learned, you know, what the attitude was of, you know, the general public about people that have lung cancer.
Multiple patients of mine say the exact same thing. You know, some of them smoke too, but
Who
you know, the
cares?
crazy thing is when someone has a heart attack, no one goes, well, did you smoke?
Right.
So it is important, you know, awareness about smoking and smoking cessation and helping people, but the stigma that goes, I feel like in this country, there's been such an effort at smoking cessation that unfortunately what happened is within the country, we demonized the whole process in a way that individuals, that real people got wrapped up in that. And it's horribly unfair and it's terrible. And if somebody needs help, we should be helping them. If somebody needs treatment, we should be treating them. Exactly. And this lung cancer has become a group that it's affected individuals in a really tangible, really real way. And it's isolated people from their communities in some ways. And this is something that I trust that people are well-meaning. They don't mean to. There's a lack of awareness. And I think what's happening is people find out that something bad happened to somebody else, and they're looking for a reason to believe that that couldn't happen to them, because that's a scary thing. But the truth is, it can happen to them. It can happen to anybody. And that's why, oh, well, that's not the one, but that's part of why we need to do something about this.
Right, exactly.
And any effort at feeling like I will isolate myself, that this couldn't happen, is just not true. And so what's happening is this stigma leads to individuals with lung cancer feeling isolated and ashamed, even when they've never smoked. But whether they did or didn't doesn't matter. We should be treating them. And this kind of false sense of security that people seek isn't real either.
Right. I wrote a little op-ed not too long ago, and the title of it was "Where Are the Casseroles?" I don't think I have to say anything else, do I?
I love that, Bonnie. I love that so
Right.
much.
Yeah.
That's perfect. It's perfect.
Right. Right. It says a lot.
It does. It definitely does.
Everybody that's sick, regardless of why they're sick or down and out, deserves a casserole, right?
I was just going to add,
Isn't that who we are?
the elephant in the corner of every room is the pandemic, and so many people have rightfully so been focusing on that. But the cancer patients who have had to weather this past year, and I have some in my family, everyone does, it's just been incredibly difficult. So I'll just ask a general question or general comment, elicit a comment, and that is, what do the healthy among us have to do, should we do, step up to do, to support those patients? Because for a lot of them, they didn't even have an opportunity to go in person and see their oncologist for a while. I don't know if there is an answer, except to say, at least we should be empathetic. Bonnie, do you have any thoughts?
I do. Empathy is, been shortcoming, and especially I'm always, going to be talking about lung cancer patients, but COVID is a respiratory disease, and so is lung cancer. I only have one side, half a lung, and my sexy voice comes from one half a vocal cord, thanks to lung cancer. But as far as I'm concerned, lung cancer patients should have been at the top of the list. I can't even imagine being hooked up to a respirator. I can't, I just can't. So empathy, and don't be afraid, especially for personalities. And I would throw this out to Hollywood. You have the ability to take this cancer on and change it. You have the ability to speak. You have the ability to let people know you've had lung cancer. We always say that when you read the obituaries, and I don't do that yet, but I guess that day's coming. If you read the obituaries and they say passed of cancer, and they don't say what kind, it's lung.
That's exactly what I always say as well. I want to just take a moment here to have we have three people behind the scenes that I'd like to acknowledge: Ben Glickman and Anna Muse and Sumathi Rammohan. Thank you, all three of you. So I'll just turn to our guy, Ben, who's monitoring the question and answer box, and give our audience a chance to ask a question. Ben, are there any questions that you can share with us?
Yes, Hildy, thank you for the introduction. And there are actually, in the past few minutes, there have been 4 questions asked in the Q&A. There's a few, I can read a few of them and we can decide based on our time where we want to answer.
Well, why don't you just start with the first one? What was the first question?
Great, good idea. First question is towards Dr. Sun. How has Upstage Lung Cancer's funding of your research helped to make more advances in methods for the early detection of lung cancer?
Right. Yes. So before we get funded by the Upstage Lung Cancer Foundation, we have been putting our efforts on other diseases like Alzheimer's disease, drug abuse, as well as like diabetes, etc. So fundings are from those areas, as well as like DoD on weapons of mass destruction, for example. So with this funding, the money supports one of our students to develop sensors for the lung cancer biomarkers. And then we start to put things together into a handheld system that's mobile, that can be used for a clinical trial. Unfortunately, because we were planning to do it, and then COVID kicked in, and we had to stop. So we really look forward to a time when COVID mitigates and when we restart the clinical efforts on our lung cancer sensors.
And I'm rooting for you to restart now, because lung cancer is not going to wait for COVID to disappear.
That's what
So
it looks like the case.
They can both get your attention. Get another student. We'll help you. Come on.
Right, we will definitely do that.
I'm rooting for you.
We'll definitely do that.
There
Well,
you
thank
go.
So what's another question, Ben?
The next question that was asked is a more general question. Some of it was already touched upon, but perhaps we could just go back and think more generally. What do you all see as the future of early detection lung cancer treatment and research?
Blood, find it in the blood, find it early before you see it on a CT scan.
Well, let me say, upstage lung cancer's single focus, all the money that we get, and you might want to donate a little listening to us tonight, because that money goes toward early detection. Bonnie mentioned blood, that's only one possibility. So we funded the research of Dr. Sun, who was looking to use the breath on sensors as one vehicle. We have funded for several years now a project at Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Sangeeta Bhatia's lab, sorry, and Tyler Jack's lab, and they're doing extraordinary things. We funded a project where they're looking at, this is very technical, but nanoparticles in the urine. These are particles that are so small that they're way before you would pick up on a CT scan, which is what we now rely on. And now they're using some of their, again, it's complicated research. I would tell you to go to Upstage Lung Cancer's website and look at the research we fund, and you can see more of the details to help explain how using organoids and some of these nanotechnologies and doing them together can help with early detection. So there are all these other opportunities for early detection, and that's, to me, that's the name of the game. Get it early, do it in a way that's not invasive, so it's not like you require surgery, where it's inexpensive and easily accessible. That's our goal, and that's where we take our funding to support the most extraordinary research in those areas.
May I ask a question of either doctor or both, just on that same score? What can we as individuals who know our bodies, what should we be thinking about or looking? If your medical exam isn't up for another 6 months, but you're not quite feeling right, isn't that the time to check it out? What should we be looking for, Dr. Seth?
Yeah, lung cancer often doesn't cause any symptoms. So I have people who come in with disease in various, that it's spread in their body, and they go, but I feel completely fine. Are you sure? Now, if somebody gets a cough, if somebody has a diagnosis of pneumonia, after a pneumonia, you should be getting some kind of imaging, even if it's, depending on what the doctor says, it could be a chest x-ray, depending on the pneumonia, but a month later to make sure that that really cleared. There are plenty of people that get pneumonia, and then it turns out that there is a cancer there also. And so if the pneumonia is not clearing, if there's something that's persisting, if a cough is ongoing, these need to be checked out. But lung screening is for people who don't have any symptoms at all. And the current standard of care approved by insurance is a CAT scan. It's a minimal amount of radiation. It's less than a 50th of the amount of radiation that people can be exposed to at work. So the radiologist, radiation oncologist at work, they go around with a little box that records how much radiation they're exposed to. They can get 50 times that radiation in a year, and it's completely okay. It's considered fine. So it's a very limited amount of radiation on these scans. Anybody between the ages, well, right now, 55 to 80, although that will soon be age 50 to 80. That was a recent recommendation from the US Preventative Services Task Force. That's not yet really implemented as far as insurance coverage and stuff, but will be. So age 55 to 80 currently, who has a smoking history, whose last cigarette was within the last 15 years. Now the amount of smoking history, talk with your doctor, but because it's a calculation, but last cigarette within the last 15 years. When lung cancer is detected in these individuals who have gotten a lung screening scan, 70% of the time it's early stage. And in many cases, just cutting it out and you're done. You don't even need chemotherapy. But without those scans, if you're waiting until you have symptoms or something, then that's 70% of the time at stage 4, it's already spread. And then we're not talking about cure in those cases. So it is really important. Now, there are some exciting technologies, and Hildy and Bonnie have both talked about some really cool things happening. But right now, the CAT scans catch almost everything. They're actually really accurate. They're really good screening studies. Now, there might be a nodule on there that's not cancer. And that, that sometimes just gets followed up with another scan. People can have, think of it like a freckle in the lung. And that's fine. And then you monitor it, just make sure. But this technology that currently exists is exceptional. It has the potential to prevent 50,000 lung cancer deaths a year. We're talking about a huge number. I mean, this is 1,000 people a week. Their deaths could be prevented from doing these screening in the people who currently qualify. As I mentioned, it's going to be a decrease in the amount of smoking history, and starting at age 50, which is actually going to double the number of people that qualify for lung screening. So that will push that number even higher. So right now, the biggest thing is making sure people are aware of what is approved already and getting those scans. And so I think the best thing you can do now is really spread that word, which obviously this is part of that effort, but for people to be aware of that and make sure people are asking their doctors about lung screening.
And I also just would add that if you have a concern, and if for whatever reason your doctor is dismissive of it, but it's a big concern, I would say just keep pushing to get this evaluated. Sometimes, it's not clear exactly if lung cancer is inherited or not, but then sometimes you see it's rampant in families. So, and so there, somebody may feel like it's rampant in my family and gives me a lot of anxiety to worry about whether this is something that will happen to me. So anyway, I think the point is just, to advocate for yourself or get somebody to help you advocate in these medical situations. Is there another question, Ben?
Yes, there is. There's a few questions.
How about one more?
Only one more?
No, I mean, let's just go one at a time. Let's see what's there.
Yeah. So an audience member asked, what a unique idea to use the arts and performance as a vehicle for supporting early detection research. How can the arts and medical pharmaceutical industries grow this partnership to drive even greater impact?
Great.
Well, I think, who was saying this before? Was it Bonnie or something about, Hollywood? I think, I think that's just it. Stigma is one of those things that we need to overcome. Not to be a shameless promoter, but one of our podcasts is called Stigma Schmigma. And the reason I called it stigma schmigma, I'd like someday for stigma to be like, what are you talking about? There's no stigma with lung cancer. So there are people like, what's his name, Richie Sambora, his of Bon Jovi's group. His father died of lung cancer. I know Laura Linney's father died of lung cancer. There are other people who have been, you know, touched by lung cancer in their families. And if we could, you know, lasso them, I would love to get more celebrities involved just for the sake of getting more eyes on the problem, get more attention. So thank you for thinking it's a great idea. I really appreciate that. And that was part of my idea. I always think it's like Mary Poppins, you know, a spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down. A lot of people don't want to talk about lung cancer, they'll flee. But most people love the performing arts. They love music, they love theater, they love all these kinds of things. So I figured if we could slip in a few words during a wonderful concert, you'd be surprised how effective it can be. And we've had some people who have walked away from a concert, and actually I've gotten emails saying I went to the doctor and actually they found a tumor and it was early, and thank you. So that, to me, that, you know, it's inspiring. It just, you know, it's very important. So
from a logistical point of view, what we're proving tonight, and people have been proving it now for the last 6 or 8 months, is that, you know, virtual programming can work. I'm just thinking about contacting these mega stars who, you know, maybe have a little more time on their hands these days. There's something called Cameo. I don't know if anyone's familiar with it, but you can have a star, you know, a sports athlete, whatever. But I'm just thinking now's the time for us to strike. And if anybody in the audience has a link, a connection to somebody in the athletic world or in entertainment, get in touch with Hildy, get in touch with Upstage, and we'll connect with them and try to get them on video, which is the easiest thing in the world. You don't have to send a limo. What's wrong with that?
absolutely.
I know you have a jet. I know you have a jet. In fact, I have a jet.
There.
But
perfect.
we don't have to send a jet. I think now we're poised to.
I want the jet.
John
I
wants
want
the jet. John wants to get.
That's
I'll
it.
pick you up in Brazil. We'll get a waxing. Anyway,
That's it. God. Oh my God.
I think now's the time to strike. That's it.
Is there another question for us, Ben? Ben?
Yes, there is. So there's an attendee who asked, to the lung cancer survivors on the call, what is the most important thing you've learned through your battle with disease?
Bonnie, you want to?
That there's a lot of people out there we have to help that deserve it and have earned it. And it just inspires me more to do more.
Yeah, I feel like, you know, for me, each day is very precious, and gratitude is something we all deserve to have and appreciate, you know, to be grateful for what we do have. And I think this is about the kind of counterbalance to all the negativity that's been around us for the last several years. And so no matter what your situation is, if you're healthy, you know, go out and live as best you can, especially during a pandemic, it's hard. So, you know, I started brushing up on my French during this time. You know, there are things, I even got a jigsaw puzzle that I worked. It was a 1,000-piece puzzle, and I got everything together until the last 10 pieces, which were missing. What? So, you know, find things to do that bring you joy. And if you can share that with another person, if you can try to walk in someone else's shoes, if people are ill, see if there's something you can do for them. And it's about, I think it's full circle of what we were talking about. You know, it's a small world, you know, it's a cliche, but it is true. It's a very small world, and we have small communities, we have small families, we have small countries. We're all connected. So, you know, live life to the max that you can. So that's my takeaway with this.
Ben, we have time for one more question at this point, if you have
Yes.
one.
Fantastic. Let's see. So this is actually a great question because it brings us into our concert 3 weeks from now. And Mr. John Dempsey asked, are there any theories as to why younger people are getting lung cancer?
Bonnie Adario will answer this.
It's a very different cancer. It's a very different lung cancer. You know, we discovered young lung cancer back in, I think 2010. And we did a study called Genomics of Young Lung. These young people have a lot of mutations. 82% of them diagnosed with lung cancer have a mutation. They're very fit. They never smoke. They are the complete antithesis of what you might think of as a lung cancer patient. There's a lot being done about it now. I can tell you a really quick little story about the very first young lung cancer patient we found. I heard through the grapevine that there was a lady who had a daughter that went to Cal Berkeley. She was the coxswain of the crew team, and that she was diagnosed with lung cancer at age 20. And so I reached out to all the resources I have in the lung world, including international centered tumor all over the world, thinking that she must have a mutation. But at the time, there were only a few mutations that we knew of. I know now if we went and got her tissue, we would find she had something. But it's a very different cancer. It's growing. About 20% of all lung cancer is young lung cancer. And these are people under 40 years of age. Many are in their 20s. There was a big article in the newspaper the other day about a young girl who was diagnosed with young lung cancer while she was pregnant. It's a growing lung cancer, and lung cancer itself is where we're just starting to see how mutated it really is. And that's a whole different conversation that would take us a lot longer to talk about tonight and here where we are. But lung cancer is leading the way in personalized medicine. It's really leading the way in precision medicine. Other people are following us now. The only thing left for us to do is get these patients living longer and finding lung cancer early. There's so many good things happening, honestly.
Absolutely. And I wanted to say that Upstage Lung Cancer, this is our 7th year of supporting the Young Lung Genome Project, and this year the Young Lung Epidemiology Study. And as Ben mentioned, we have another concert, mark your calendars, for May 20th. I think that's right, May 20th. And it's a concert with young performers and conceptualized by, where are we going? And conceptualized by some really eager and aggressive, wonderful people on our board. So I hope you guys will tune in for this very lively, very exciting project that will support the Young Lung Epidemiology Study from Alchemy and GoTo. So we're proud that that's going on. So in any case, Ben has now changed the screen, and you can see different ways that you could reach out to the panelists if you would like to do that. Please know that, again, we have a lot of these we have another podcast with Bonnie's husband, Tony Adario, on Backstage at Upstage. It's on all the platforms for podcasts, but that one was wonderful. And it does have a wonderful conversation with an incredibly inspiring young woman who was diagnosed, I think at 22. So hopefully we leave you with this evening's conversation to say we're all connected. Do something, as Jordan would say, do something good. Try to reach out and do something that's good for someone else. It will make you feel good too. And I just want to thank our panelists who are extraordinary people and who are dedicated and do such wonderful things with their lives. And we wish you good health and you know, stay connected to Upstage Lung Cancer for our next concert and other wild and crazy things we may have in the pipeline. So thank you and good night.
Thank you.
Jordan, is it be well so you can do good?
Yes, be well so you
Be
can
well.
do good. You ought to be in radio. That's pretty good.
Stay safe, stay safe.
I really like that. Thank you.
You have the voice for it, Jacob. Thank you, everybody. It was wonderful sharing the evening with you tonight. You're all amazing, and I'm looking forward to talking to all of you more and more.
Absolutely. And now that it's all virtual, we can do that. Ben,
Right.
are we still live?
Yes, I'm turning it off in just a moment, saying bye to
Thank you.
everyone. Thank you all for coming
Obrigado.
to the
Thank
show.
you. Thank you, everybody.
Brasil. Obrigado.
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 Au revoir, mes amis. Bonne santé.
Oh.
Thank you, Hildy.
Thank